Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to the Hindu analysis today. Today we start our session by announcing two very important things, but we do that in a somber and a sad note. I will discuss why. The Resolve 2025 offer is now live with 55% off, which would make the course for the 9-12 months between 23,999. And under it, you also get what is called as the CSE Assure concept, wherein if you do not crack UPSC CSE 2026, you will get a free extension for the next year itself. The only request is, if you are going to use the IAS English code through which you will take this course, you will thereafter also get mentorship from our team. This is the only way to ascribe you to the English team and therefore our family. And therefore, please do use this code in order to get the discount, the reduced price, more than that, the mentorship sessions as planned with us. With this, let's talk about UCSC, because as you know, you have one more day to register for a very interesting and important moment, which is on 29th. We will have at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. a UCSC test, which is a scholarship test, through which you can get up to 90% scholarship, plus laptops, smartphones and gift vouchers. Other than that, if you are 2025, you can assess your preparation with regards to this test itself. Good morning to all of you. Now, I start this session on a sad note because we lost a true Indian, the architect of New India, modern India, and whatever we are today as a nation, be it with regards to fiscal security, be it with regards to food security, forex reserves, we as consumers, the whole economy itself, the way it is today is because of the most important personality who changed everything in the context of Indian economy, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, we lost him last night when he was actually admitted into the hospital AIIMS. He had already gone through multiple bypasses. He was not keeping well. But unfortunately, on already a very sad day, as you remember, 26 December does not hold a lot of joy for us because of the tsunami in 2004. We now also will remember this day for the stalwart and the statesman. He has been recently in news in multiple contexts. People have talked about him. There have been people who wrote multiple books about him. People made their careers during his prime ministership and when he was the finance minister. You can say anything and everything about him, but one of the cleanest politicians, if you want to call him, but an academician who became a politician by accident. And truly, what we are as a nation, we owe everything to him. And he was born in colonial India, and he lost his mother during the partition. And he, in a way, embodied that spirit of, he was born in modern day Pakistan, Punjab, but he embodied that spirit of the Punjabi migrants or the Punjabis who had actually got displaced during the partition. And that is why he's the true OG and legend, the GOAT as we call him. And therefore, it is not a surprise that the whole newspaper today was flooded with most of his achievements. So the first four topics which we are going to discuss, we will discuss the different aspects related to him. How did he contribute as an economist, as a diplomat, as a prime minister? And therefore, we'll have a detailed discussion because now he becomes extremely relevant. As it is, LPG is always in the news. LPG is what makes India today a truly what we call as 3 to 4 trillion economy. Thereafter, we also talk about Kazakhstan, something which we discussed on 24th, rare earth metals. Then we have a Secretary of Fisheries writing an article. It becomes important in that regard. A small, simple, straightforward topic related to stampedes in India. And last but not the least, something related to prelims and GS paper 1, which is an award. But truly, the newspaper today, be it Indian Express, be it HT, be it TOI, or be it the Hindu, it was only about him. And truly, he deserves that space in our memory because with regards to our nuclear program, with regards to our economy, whatever we are today is because of him. So on this extremely tragic note, let's discuss who he really was and what makes him the true Indian, the true builder of New India as we call it today. Now, he was born in what we call as unpartitioned Punjab, now in Pakistan. And during the process of the partition, as we know, there was violence on both sides, which in turn led to a lot of displacement. He was also displaced, came to New Delhi. But thereafter, there was a certain spirit which the Hindus and the Punjabi community of erstwhile undivided Pakistan had. And he had that fighting spirit, and that he showed not just as a diplomat, but as also an economist. So in 1954, he will complete his master's in economics from the Punjab University. Thereafter, he will go to the Cambridge University in 1957. And by 1962, he had not just a PhD, but a DPhil from the Oxford University in economics. When he used to speak in the parliament about anything related to economics, even the G20 used to listen to him. That's a very interesting remark which Obama made, that when Dr. Singh talks about the economy, the world economy, in the context of what is happening today in G20 or any other multilateral forum, everybody used to listen to him very, very closely, because nobody understood the world economy of the 90s better and the 21st century better than him. And that is where he's also the one why we have an alternative fuel in the concept of nuclear technology and nuclear fuel today, because of his very criticized and very problematic but 1, 2, 3 policy, which I'll discuss with you. So that is where his career is illustrious, and truly so. He was a pure academician who now became the what we call as the forerunner and the driving force in the Indian economy. So by 1971, he will join the government of India as the economic advisor to the Commerce Ministry. In 72, he will become the chief economic advisor to the Finance Ministry. In the 80s, he was part of the Planning Commission. Then he will have a 3 years very interesting career as the governor of the RBI. Thereafter, he will become the deputy chairman of the Planning Commission itself. And as RBI governor, he was known to have interacted with multiple very important personalities of Indian politics to understand what India needs and thereafter what India wants. By 1990, he will become the advisor to the Prime Minister on economic affairs. And in March of 1991, he will be appointed as the chairman of the UGC. By 1991, he will also get elected to the Raj Sabha. And it is in that capacity that he will then be the finance minister of the PV Narasimha Rao government between 1991 to 96. And thereafter, our prime minister for 10 years, a decade between 2004 and 2014. He was not even into office for 3 to 4 months before we had the 2004 tsunami. But we'll try to map his what we call as policies as the finance minister and as the prime minister in order to understand how he truly has changed India in when it comes to economic sense and diplomatic sense. One of the pioneers of the Quad in that regard, and nuclear space and nuclear technology in India. So he is now survived by his wife and 3 daughters. I had the privilege to be taught by one of the daughters of Prime Minister Singh, which is Upinder Singh, who was the HOD when I was in the Department of History. And like himself, all his daughters are, you can say, at the pinnacle of whatever they are doing. And that is where he truly showed that the politician space, the space of the parliament, is not of the space of the uninformed. You can be a proper academician, understanding what you're doing, and he therefore was you can say, he lived by that example, that you really don't need to be just good with the people. You can also be the pioneer, and you can be the legend of that area to be then elected by the people. And therefore, he has that tag of the accidental prime minister, wherein the UPA government selected him to become the prime minister rather than Sonia Gandhi gave up that position. The political space, he has been criticized, and that is how politics is. But nobody can deny his contribution to the Indian economy and to India. Now, there were 4 articles about him in different capacities, in which one they talked about the Indian economy, the other one with regards to external relations, the other one regards to what he did in 1991, and thereafter as the Prime Minister, the architect of the LPG. What I've done is I've tried to amalgamate all four together so that you have a basic continuous understanding. And once you are able to understand his basic contributions, you should be able to write an answer in the mains examination. If the mains does not ask you a direct question naming him, there will be something for sure with regards to his contribution, either in the context of nuclear. So now 1, 2, 3 becomes very, very important. NPT becomes important. The concept of the crisis of 1991 becomes important. And LPG again becomes important. We've already seen an LPG based question in the examination in the mains GS paper 3. So that way, be it GS paper 2 or 3, he's an important personality, and truly so. So can I begin the discussion for today? 4 articles related to him, and thereafter we'll shift to rare earth metals. If everybody is with me, we're on the same page with regards to what are we trying to do here. Yes? Okay. Now, we'll try to analyze him in each of the capacities he was. As a student, he was a brilliant student, meaning first class degree in economics from Cambridge University, a DPhil from Oxford University. He was one of the foremost economists in India, and that was one of the reasons why he had multiple, you can say, roles in the Indian government related to economics, be it Chief Economic Advisor, Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, RBI Governor, or Union Finance Secretary. The idea is very simple. He was the right person to manage something which India is going to face in 1991. Now, the context of 1991 is important to understand the gravity of his moves. And if we talk about the 90s, India was in a pure, proper crisis because of the policies followed by the, you can say, 3 prime ministers before P.V. Narasimha Rao. And with regards to the cascading effects of the war which happened in Bangladesh, which is the Bangladesh war, and India's involvement into it, how we had gone through a pure political crisis in the process of the emergency. By 1990s, India faced 4 very major problems when it comes to its economy. We, as it is, were an import-based economy. You should know this. We were importing most of our food. We were importing most of our, you can say, basic electronics. We were also what is called as a closed economy based on socialistic principles, wherein we had PSUs managing most of the production. There's something called this license Raj which used to exist, wherein you cannot start an industry without getting a license from the government itself, and the government through the licenses used to manage the geography where the factory is going to come up, what type of subsidy it will get, what type of taxation will happen. And the Planning Commission, that was a very, very powerful body at that given point of time. And the economy was very centrally controlled. That is called a centrally controlled. We were not purely a mixed economy, which we were after 1991. We were more towards that, what we call as Leninistic ideas of controlled, planned economy, in which every aspect of the economy, be it import, be it export, be it production, was very closely monitored by the Planning Commission and the Government of India, which is not good if you are very short of your what is called as forex, or when it comes to your production capacity itself. So because India did not have pure food security by 1990s, and because we are an oil importing country, the problem was that by the 1st January and February of 1990s and 91, we were now facing a very big issue with regards to our exchange reserves. We only had money to bring in 15 days of our imports, which included a lot of critical and essential commodities. And this is where now the balance of payment crisis in the economy is going to come into context, which will also come with a fiscal deficit, which was now touching close to 9% at 8.4% of the GDP. Plus, there will be the Gulf War, in which Iraq will invade Kuwait, which will in turn lead to the oil prices to go up, which is not good if you do not have a lot of forex in that sense. And with that, inflation in the Indian economy itself went from 6.7% to 16.7%, a double-digit inflation. And more than that, by the end of the 90s, it was very clear that the God had failed. USSR was going to disintegrate for sure. By 1989, we'd already seen the Berlin Wall to fall, and therefore the Soviet Union was one of the most important sources for cheap oil. But more than that, raw material itself was in a proper crisis, and therefore, be it our closest partner, be it our prices, be it our oil, be it our fiscal deficit, or be it our GDP growth or our BOP, we were in such a space that we needed fundamental reforms. Now, I can be very clear in saying this to you, that if the finance minister would have been a politician, none of these steps would have been taken which were taken by Finance Minister Manmohan Singh. Because a politician would always think about the opposition, would think about the optics of things. He knew what India needed, and he was ready to face opposition and criticism for what he was doing. This is the difference between a politician and a person who knows what he's doing. And this is where he will now ask the Rao government, the PV Narasimha Rao government, to take certain steps which would be considered very problematic, could even lead to, you can say, political death. But it was the need of the hour in that regard. This is where the first moves which he will do is that he will devaluate the rupee, which is the government itself will devaluate the what we call as the value of the rupee by 9%, and thereafter by 11% in the next 2 days, 19% in 3 days, in order to make sure that India had export competitiveness, and more than that, the forex, whatever was left, was now in a way adequate at least to cover 30 days. Further, he will go to the IMF. IMF will create multiple conditions. With capitalism and the US winning the larger Cold War, it was very clear that capitalism would prevail, and India's USSR tinged, or you can say Soviet tinged economy is not going to work in that sense. And this is where India will take 2 loans, one from the Union Bank of Switzerland, the other one from the Bank of England, by pledging a lot of the gold which the RBI had. But the idea was IMF was ready to give us a very important, you can say, line of credit. But for that, there were multiple conditions which were based on the principle of opening up the Indian economy and what is today called as LPG, specifically liberalization and privatization. But immediately he will take multiple bold decisions which are still today criticized. But the idea was this was the need of the hour, and that is what he understood. He understood what was the way in which India could transition from a pure socialistic economy to a mixed economy which could then survive the 21st century in the proper sense. And this is where he will now independently understand the economic challenges which India faced, and he will come up with this idea that this over centralization and excessive bureaucratization is not something which India needs. What India needs is LPG, which is called liberalization, privatization, globalization. So do we understand the magnitude of the crisis which India faces at that given point of time? Then I'll talk about LPG. How does LPG change that? We were in a proper crisis with regards to not having a lot of money to get the imports, which is essential to keep the Indian economy alive and for the people to have basic essential commodities. And this is where he has to change something, because the IMF has already created pressure. And over and above that, pledging gold was not the only option which we had. We had to fundamentally change something so that Indian economy would become autonomous and at least healthy to keep India alive as a nation when it comes to fiscal prudence and economic health. This is where he will introduce the LPG reforms, also ask the Prime Minister to introduce the new industrial policy, under which for the first time FDI, foreign direct investment, was allowed. Up to 51% of foreign equity could now enter into a certain PSU or a certain industry. He will also remove what is called as the License Raj, which used to be called the Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, which now allowed merger, opening, expansion and setting up of industries purely based on market interest and market forces, rather than the government dictating where the industries should be. Now, when we talk about LPG, there were multiple, you can say, components under it. The first one being that the new trade policy basically wanted to do 2 things. First, let the exports be boosted by removing the high custom duties, and the licensing process should go away. The concept was the government should not control each and every commodity which comes to India. And more than that, when it comes to non-essential imports, it should be further linked to exports. Meaning, if we are taking something as a raw material, we should reprocess it and send it as what we call as a finished commodity. So there should be manufacturing. We should not just consume in the form of imports. We should also think of import substitution and export-based economy. This was the first time somebody was talking like this, which is, let us not just consume. Let us also produce and export. He also said that the state-owned firms which import specific commodities, this monopoly should go away. The more actors which will be there in the import sector, the better pricing will be, the price competitiveness and the inflation will be eased if we remove the state-owned firms and their monopoly over certain imports. So therefore, be it basic electronic items or basic goods, the idea was the idea of consumerism in India, that we eat, what we call as consume a lot of electronic items, a lot of different things which matter to us may not be in essential manner. The state was controlling that. Therein, high custom duty and very high prices. He said, open up the economy, let us allow anybody and everybody, at least firms which are not controlled by the state, to compete amongst one another, to bring in those imports, and therefore have a sector in which spending increases, but that spending does not add to inflation, but organic growth in consumption, which is equally important. Thereafter, he ended the license Raj, wherein he argued that licensing will not take us anywhere. We cannot be the only actor. If the state is going to control each and every aspect of the industries and economy, it will in turn lead to again corruption, red tapeism, and too many actors being kept outside. If people want to import, export, if they want to create an industry, let them. And let us not dictate that it should be created in the Bihar sector, in the Jharkhand sector, in Chhattisgarh. Let them set it up where they want to. So license Raj was dismantled by him through the process of liberalization. And this is where 18 industries licensing was removed, except for what we call as strategic industries. It was totally open. So how state-owned leads to high prices? Lalit, because if the state owns imports or state-owned enterprise imports, there were too many custom duties. So firstly, the custom duty was very high. But if you think of it, right, Lalita, if there's only one actor and that one actor is bringing in, for example, one television, and it is being imported, for example, from Czechoslovakia or Slovakia. Now what is happening is there's only one actor, and if the price is, it's a basic monopoly idea, if the price is 10,000 rupees, there is nobody selling it at 9,000 or 8,000, and there is no incentive to sell it at a lower price. So prices remain high and are basically state set. So monopolistic market, you are the one who dictates what. If they ask for a 20,000 rupees for the same TV set, it would still be sold at 20,000. The idea is the more the players, the more the competition, more price competitiveness, and in turn leads to the same thing you would have seen, for example, if there's a certain novelty product, for example, flip phones. Initially, only Samsung sold it. So it was being sold at 2 lakh rupees, 2.5 lakh rupees. Now, with multiple actors selling flip phones, the prices have come down to 90, 95, 1 lakh 30. So with more players, there has to be play on price. So that is the idea. Okay. The second thing which he did is called privatization. Privatization was critical for the Indian economy because now there was a need for foreign direct investment through automatic approval into certain sectors. So up to 50% was introduced, but was capped at 40% in multiple sectors. But the idea was we then cannot just have FPI. What is foreign portfolio investment? Foreign portfolio investment is when an external actor buys, you can say, stake, but not directly. He or she is buying stake in the process of portfolios, in the process of shares, and therefore, if there is any global headwind, money used to come out of the economy very quickly, because FPIs are there for basic profit. If they see that the economy is not working, they will remove that capital from the economy itself. And this is where FPIs over a long period of time are problematic. And therefore, he said, no, we have to bring in the stakeholders into India so that their money is also bound in India itself. That is why FDI is considered a better way of investing than FPI, because therein you have a foreign player directly investing into a company in India, and therefore he or she or that actor will thereafter also face the other global headwinds and the ups and downs of a capitalist economy. So FDI was something which was considered better by him, and that is why he brought in these changes which allowed for the Sensex to also go up, but at the same point of time, direct investment into companies which was previously not allowed. He will also remove public sector monopolies in multiple sectors. The national security sectors were kept together with state monopoly, ordnance, ammunition, space, nuclear. But the idea was not everything should be PSU based. And this allowed for diversification of the Indian market. And again, you can say monopolistic principles of PSUs being diluted. Today, we have come to a point that most of the PSUs, the government has disinvested and is now leading and is trying to introduce multiple elements which may be used. For example, the easiest example of that would be surge pricing in the Indian Railways. That is a pure capitalistic principle being used in a what we call as government controlled sector in that regard. But we are trying to do that. Thereafter, he also tried to open up the markets so that there are more foreign goods, more foreign investment, and more actors. The idea was, if the state is going to control everything, if the planning commission will have such a big role in controlling everything, then we will have a restrictive economy and we will have a very high duties based economy. We will have a very, very high, you can say, price margin difference between something being sold in the Arab countries and being sold in India. And that in turn also leads to more smuggling in that regard. Last but not the least of the LPG is the G, which is globalization. He truly started to link the Indian economy with the global market, with the global trade. The idea was we need to open ourselves to trade, to investment, to ideas, and the devaluation of the rupee for export competitiveness was directly related to the idea of globalization. We can't have a rupee which is so, you can say, appreciated in that regard that our exporter does not have price competitiveness in the EU sector, in the European sector, or in America. So rather you devalue the currency itself, that now that currency is weak vis-a-vis the dollar, and therefore it allows for price competitiveness and a comparative advantage over other importers into the US or the European sector. These ideas were pure economists. You can say economists understanding and manifestation of Keynesian, you can say, economic principle. No one else could have ever managed this other than Dr. Manmohan Singh, because he knew what he was doing. These were not done in an arbitrary fashion. He had a certain plan and he followed it. And he went through with it, irrespective of as much political criticism may have come through at that given point of time. And this is the first major, you can say, achievement of him as the finance minister, that between 1991 and 2020, from only what we call as 270 billion as you can say GDP, we are now sitting at close to 3 trillion by 2020. And our forex reserves and FDIs have increased so much that today we have 82 billion vis-a-vis 97 million in 1991. So the FDI flows, you can see, exponential increase from 97 million in 1991 to $82 billion today in the Indian economy. So we have grown exponentially in GDP growth and GDP size. We have also grown exponentially when it comes to FDI. And because of the license Raj being removed, India turned out to be and has now become a tertiary based, what we call a service sector economy. That when it came to IT, telecom, automobile, or specifically IT revolution, was based on his LPG reforms. So as an economist, nobody can say that his principles, his policies were detrimental to India and he did not do anything. He is actually the true architect of the new India as we know it today. The fact that you and me can go to a supermarket and have thousands of options for food, be it electronics or be it basic household items, that is because of him only. And he should be and will be remembered for that. But he is also the one who gave us an alternative fuel which was not available to us. And that is how he changed our foreign policy and the nuclear policy of India itself. When he was in office, not only 4 to 5 months into office, he was faced by a very big crisis, which we discussed yesterday in a lot of detail, which is the 2004 tsunami. Every politician in India said that we should take aid from the US, we should take aid from the EU, we should take aid from the Western countries. He directly said, I do not want to take any aid for this tsunami from any global power because my economy is healthy enough to support myself. Rather, because he understood the magnitude of the tsunami, he, within hours, cleared the Navy and the Air Force to do humanitarian missions in Indonesia, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, and India turned out to be one of the most important first responder nations throughout the ASEAN countries and throughout the Indian Ocean world. This is where India's relationship with Japan improved quite a lot. And in the process of coordinating in this tsunami relief process, he also brought us closer to the US, Japan, and Australia, which is considered to be the genesis of the later, today, what we call as the Quad, what we call as quadrilateral arrangement through which we are trying to balance China. It was him that we were able to create a better relationship with this whole sector. Rather than taking aid and not helping others, he showed that India had the capacity, still has the capacity to be a forerunner when it comes to humanitarian aid and act like a responsible power in this sector. And that is where people argue that he is one of the architects of the Quad. Because whatever Quad is possible today is because of India-Japan relationship becoming better. Because India-Japan relationship was soured because of the nuclear fuel and what we call as fissile material crisis which India had after the 2 tests of Pokhran 1 and Pokhran 2. This is where he showed a lot of character. People call him the accidental prime minister, people call him the silent prime minister. But when it came to decision making, as he always says, that history would be more kinder to him rather than the media. And this is where, yes, his contributions cannot be ignored. Further, one of the biggest problem which India had for renewable energy and as a global power was the condemnation and the, you can say, isolation which India faced because of its 2 tests at Pokhran, which were the nuclear tests. Now, these tests happened after the NPT came into context. The Non-Proliferation Treaty, which basically prevents spread of nuclear weapons and promotes disarmament and peaceful use of nuclear technology. India did not sign the NPT. India is not even till today the member of the NSG, which is Nuclear Suppliers Group. But the idea was, it said that the NPT only recognizes China, France, Russia, UK and US as nuclear powers. And that is a discrimination against India and a country which was trying to find its feet with a problematic neighbor like Pakistan. So we had the right for nuclear self-determination, and therefore for close to 2 decades since Pokhran 1, India always faced a lot of issues in getting what we call as uranium-235. The problem India has as a nuclear power is we have a lot of thorium, but we do not have a lot of uranium. More than that, for any form of nuclear test for military purposes, you need repurposing technology. Because what is used in a nuclear bomb is not uranium but plutonium. And therefore, you should have the capacity to take out the plutonium or the uranium out of your nuclear reactor and then reprocess it to make it weapons grade military uranium or plutonium. This is a very important concept which everybody understood, and this is where Pokhran 1 and Pokhran 2 were considered to be problematic, because when Pokhran 2 will happen in 1998, the argument which the US gave was that you took our technology, which we gave you at Tarapur, and thereafter you learned to reprocess uranium to make it plutonium, and therefore you have betrayed us. So the argument was that we took a reactor from the Americans, we took the USSR support, we took Canadian support, and thereafter we were able to do 2 tests. More than that, NPT itself is very, you can say, P5 oriented. It tries to keep the monopoly intact. India never agreed to NPT. But the problem is, in the 21st century, it was important that India transitions to nuclear power. And you can have as many nuclear power plants. If you don't have uranium, it is useless. Though the Russians were ready to give us the power, the technology to develop nuclear stations and nuclear power stations, still the issue is, how do we import uranium? And this is where, again, he faced a no confidence motion. A whole ruckus was created in the parliament. People still argue that this is one of the most controversial things which ever happened under him. But his civil nuclear deal with America, which is called the 123 agreement, is still considered to be the bulwark of modern nuclear technology in India. And this is where you will realize that the way he was able to use his personal relationship with Bush and with Obama, in turn allowing India to have what we call as nuclear cooperation between these 2 countries, where though we were not an NPT member and we were not an NSG member, we were allowed to take non-military grade or get non-military grade civil uranium inflows from America. And this will further allow us to have the the only nation to have in 2016 to have a civil nuclear deal with Japan. Japan does not have a nuclear deal with a non-NPT member. In 2016, it is his, you can say, efforts which allowed for the Japanese to understand that India was a responsible power. India was not Pakistan, it was a responsible power. And this is where it's called 123, because it is under the section 123 of the Atomic Energy Act of 1954, which allowed for cooperation between these 2 countries. But the idea is 123 till today is considered to be very, very important. So whatever we are today, though we are not part of the NSG, but we have multiple ways in which we get nuclear power and uranium inflows into India, is because of his actions. He himself, along with his team, negotiated with the NSG, the Nuclear Suppliers Group, with the US, and the US started to change its understanding of India under him only. And this is where his personal relationships with Bush and Obama mattered. Barack Obama was extremely fond of him and gave him a lot of respect everywhere. And he was the only person he used to listen to very, very closely. So this is the second major thing which he did as Prime Minister. That was done as Finance Minister. This was done as Prime Minister. And thereafter, today, he is also the architect of the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which is Manrega, was his brainchild. When it comes to Rashtriya Swasthya Mission, basic ideas, again, it is Dr. Manmohan Singh who brought in that idea and the structure of it. And therefore, if you actually look around you, most of what you do today, most of the freedoms which you have today, most of the items which you have today, most of the things which you eat today, is because of his actions in 1991. This is where he truly is and should be considered the architect of New India, which came through after 1991. And till today, and maybe for the next century, we will see multiple things which India will be able to achieve because of him. So this is basically the larger perspective. I think, and you will be able, Shyam sir will be taking a session, specifically a session on his contributions. It would most probably be an interesting conversation between Sarmat sir and Shyam sir. So we'll have that session also, where we'll go in depth into it. But all of this may be good context for you to watch that video once it is available on our platform. So do subscribe to the platform in that regard. Just to give you a basic summary of what he actually did. First, 1991 LPG reforms. Second, 123 nuclear agreement. Third, Quad and Japan-US relationships. And fourth, basic economic reform and the ideas related to Manrega and other things also which happened under UPA. He is also related to multiple scams, from the 2G scam to the multiple political crises which happened under UPA too. But in most cases, it was the party to be blamed rather than him. And therefore, for us, 26 December now has two very painful memories attached to it. One of a tsunami which hit India in 2004 and a major loss to India in 2024 with regards to Prime Minister Manmohan Singh and his, you can say, unwavered and true legacy of making India what it is today. If we understand this is the type of question, if the UPSC wants, they can ask you. The contributions of Dr. Manmohan Singh to the Indian economy and foreign policy was the basis of New India. Elaborate. This word New India is used by the current government quite a lot, but we can call it New India 1.0 and New India 2.0, which the Prime Minister is now building with regards to all alignment. And that ways our foreign minister is true to the idea that when you make an academician who's the best in his field actually the minister of that sector, you get the replies which Dr. Jaishankar gives to the West, truly so. And that is where these two men are exceptions in this larger story of politicians. Rather, I would call them legends in that regard. He truly was a legend and will remain a legend. And with our foreign policy the way it is going, our foreign minister will also be in that list very soon. Okay, are we all on the same page with regards to this? 4 articles. I've tried to summarize them in a more systematic manner rather than going into the controversies. He does not deserve to be demonized in this moment. So may he rest in peace. And he as of right now should be commemorated and celebrated for what he did for India. Political scandals are nothing new and they will keep on happening. It is about what he did for India to make us what we are today. Okay. With this, we move to the second article, which is on Kazakhstan. If you remember, on 24th of December, I had a very comprehensive discussion on the concept of what today is called as crucial elements, rare earth metals, and the problem when it comes to how India is purely dependent on China for it. I hope you were a part of that conversation. Now, this article has been written from the perspective of how China does hold most of the export economy when it comes to rare earth elements and how Kazakhstan can be an alternative to China for that. Just to refresh your memory, if you remember that the lanthanide series of the periodic table and the elements which you see in front of you are called rare earth elements because of the percentage of the presence in the Earth's crust. And because most of them are used in critical, you can say, sectors such as defense, space, and what we call as semiconductor, automobile, and electronics sector, the control of the export and the supply is extremely problematic and important. And therefore, looking for alternatives is not a bad thing. This is where China, as of right now, is holding on to the supply of antimony, which is very important for solar cells, batteries, and military gear. And previously, it has also stopped, you can say, created the artificial crisis of the elements which were needed for semiconductors during the COVID crisis. Most of the issues with regards to semiconductors and the automobile sector crisis with regards to not being able to meet the demand was because chips were not available. Though there is a big economy of reprocessing of that in South Korea, but the problem is the raw material comes from China. And this is where I had shared this data with you previously also, just to refresh your memory, that between 2019 to 2024, 6 very important critical minerals, we have a dependency on China more than 40%, which is bismuth, lithium, titanium, and tritium and graphite. We have upwards of 40%, in certain cases 85% imports come from China. So this is a standard thing which I established quite comprehensively, that China holds most of the keys here. Now, what this article argues is that Kazakhstan has 15 of the 17 known rare earth elements which are needed for advanced technologies and in a way can break China's dominance. India has a lot of rare earth metals, but we do not have the reprocessing technology. We do not have the capacity to use that. For example, lithium in Jammu and Kashmir. And this is where the capital Astana, which is referring to Kazakhstan, has an agreement with Japan and Germany, with now the US and Korea, along with the EU, to explore and extract the minerals which are available in its soil. Further, you can say the extraction of a very specific type of rare earth metal which is now needed in defense technology, dysprosium, is now being, you can say, expedited, and it will double in the next 5 to 6 years. And thereafter, it has the world's full cycle beryllium and scandium factories, crucial for telecommunications, and among the 4 global manufacturers of tantalum and niobium used for nuclear reactors and clean energy. This is a very important point, that when it comes to clean energy, when it comes to defense, Kazakhstan does have the capacity to provide us with the rare earth metals which are needed. This is where the article now argues that there's a need for New Delhi, Astana, or India and Kazakhstan relationship to become better on these lines, and we can very specifically cultivate a relationship with Kazakhstan over through soft power, or be it through the process of defense cooperation or pure economic cooperation. The idea was that this article points out an alternative. It does not tell you that how do we get that relationship on track, but it identifies the potentiality of Kazakhstan, and therefore in any answer where there is a question, where the question is asking you about dependency on China, now in the conclusion say that there's a potential to get rare earth metal from Kazakhstan. This is how you develop a very good answer, so that you can bring in 2 elements together, and 2 articles together have been brought together to create a certain, you can say, comprehensive answer. You can also get a question like this, which is, Kazakhstan may be the key to India's over-reliance on China for rare earth elements. Do you agree? You cannot answer this question if you do not know the data which I provided in the past 10 minutes, and you do not know why Kazakhstan is so important. Don't learn the elements, but do understand the potentiality of Kazakhstan in that regard. That is where you have to be very comprehensive in writing a conclusion and an introduction, where you can either talk about Kazakhstan in the introduction, most probably it will go into the conclusion. So I hope that this article is sorted and you understand what is the purpose of this article in our larger learning process. Do we understand that? Do we? Yes? Yes, sir. Okay. So from Prime Minister Manmohan Singh to Kazakhstan, we now have an article which has been written by the Secretary of the Department of Fisheries. Now, would you expect the Secretary of the Department of Fisheries to give you critical data related to the Fisheries Department? Tell me, basic logic. Meaning this article is going to be positive in outlook or negative in outlook? It is going to be, though the question is negatively framed, which is why is strengthening fisheries extension services crucial? But this is where the article would never be in negative sense, because that person is the Secretary of the Department of Fisheries. First, these type of articles are what you expect in Yojana Kurukshetra, right? Now, what this article actually gives us is then 3 things. First, how is this department working? What is the scope of it? Second, it talks about 2 very important interventions which this department has done into the fisheries sector. So therefore, what we do with these type of things or these type of articles is we take out what we call as data, or at least schemes which are needed for the larger preparation. For example, if there's something related to what we call as maritime security, maritime economy, fisheries, if it comes in the GS paper 3 as a question. So therefore, our basic understanding here is to take out what are the scheme names and what is the concept itself. So what the article argues is that we have a diverse fishery resource which supports close to 3 crore fish farmers and fishers. This is extremely, you can say, diverse, but also a very big chunk of, you can say, employment is being given through the fisheries itself. The country, now this is the data which matters to us. The country has witnessed an 83% increase in the fish production since 2013-14 that stands at a record 175 lakh tons, and with 75% of this coming from inland fisheries, India is the second largest fish and aquaculture producer globally. This is what matters. This is called the present state. Now here what matters is second largest. I'll just mark it separately, and thereafter the fact that we have 83% increase. So this is how you note these things down somewhere, or you keep this PPT with you, and you can use this data to give more comprehensive answers and sprinkle it around as a good answer somewhere. So this is where sometimes these articles become important. That is why reading Yojana Kurukshetra becomes important, because Yojana Kurukshetra gives you a lot of data which can be used to write good answers for different sectors. Now in this background, what the secretary is arguing is we have to strengthen last mile fisheries, which is last mile connectivity in this sector. Now, the first scheme or government aspect which is talked about is called Matsya Seva Kendras. This is first. Matsya means fishes. Now, under the Pradhan Mantri Matsya Sampada Yojana, Matsya Seva cranes have been developed. Basically, they are Seva Kendras which help fishers and fisheries, and they help in training professionals, and is the one-stop solution for everything. This is where they have helped close to 60% of women and weaker sections are the people who are coming to these kendras itself, which is that they're helping vulnerable and, you can say, weaker sections of society to get self-employment, and therefore a very important idea. As of right now, 102 such kendras exist. Obviously, the 102 doesn't matter, but basically this is a one-stop solution kendra developed in the fisheries, in the coastal economy, so that they can get basic services with regards to fisheries, and a lot of vulnerable sections which previously did not have employment have been able to enter this sector with the assistance provided from the kendra. Second, he then talks about what is called as Sagar Mitra. Sagar Mitra. Sagar means ocean, Mitra means friends. These Sagar Mitra are very important, you can say, contact point between the government and the fishers. What these Sagar Mitras do is they compile data with regards to how much catch is coming, where the hotspot is, price fluctuations, marketing strategies, and even weather, regulations, national calamities, hygiene, and fishing zones. Meaning what they do is they compile all of this and give it to the fishers so that they understand their own, you can say, sector better. Some of this is very critical information. If, for example, a cyclone is coming through, if what is the weather going to be, where is the hotspot of the fishes itself, where are the fishers, where should the fishers not cross the border itself, where does the EEZ end. These are things which basically the Sagar Mitras help us. So we have Matsya Seva Kendra, and Matsya Seva Kendra and Sagar Mitra. Can you remember these two words? Sagar Mitra and Matsya Seva Kendra. If you can remember these two words, you are sorted with regards to the concept of what these two critical schemes do within this sector. Perfect. You say yes. Now, is there any scope of improvement? Yes. What the secretary wants is that the same type of framework should drive agricultural research and should be extended to the Krishi Vigyan Kendra. So therefore, we should have the integration of Krishi Vigyan Kendra and Matsya Seva Kendra. And the second area which can be done better is digital outreach, wherein what the National Fisheries Development Board has done is developed an aqua bazaar where they can understand basic concepts, provide practical demonstrations on seeding and breeding fishes. So basically, aqua bazaar is something like a centralized repository of help. If that cannot be accessed, then you have the Sagar Mitra. If you do not have the Sagar Mitra, then you will have the Matsya Seva Kendra. So it is digital space Aqua Bazaar, last mile connectivity Sagar Mitra, and a block or district level connectivity in the process of a Matsya Seva Kendra. This is a very interesting point. Why I'll tell you, because this gives you a model to write a very good ethics answer. You have digital Aqua Bazaar. Thereafter, you have, and as an IS officer, this would be expected from you, solutions for issues. For last mile, which is to the doorstep, Sagar Mitra. And when it comes to district or block level, you have Matsya Seva Kendra. So isn't this a very interesting structure through which you outreach to the sector and also provide them help at each level? Meaning, if you can't meet the Sagar Mitra, go to the Matsya Seva Kendra. If you don't have access to either, then you go to the digital Aqua Bazaar. So this is called a multi-sectorial, multi-dimensional approach to solve an issue. Fishery is an important point. So don't think that this discussion is just a peripheral point. Fisheries is mentioned in the UPSC syllabus directly with regards to GS paper 3. So do understand that you can get a question out of this area also. So is this sorted for us with regards to Matsya Seva Kendra and the concept of this article itself? Are we clear about this? Come on, everybody has to say yes. Yes? Okay. Now, facilitating price and requisite marketing needs means in this scheme. Needs means, see, facilitating price and requisite marketing means that if, for example, Lalita, I am a producer in Karnataka and I am trying to determine at what price should I sell my fish. How do I know what is the basic, you can say, base price at which this fish is being sold in Tamil Nadu or in Andhra Pradesh or in Maharashtra? So therefore, price determination is a very big issue, which most of these fishers don't have an understanding of. Second is, how do you market your product? What if your fishes are better than any other fish which is available to the market? So the idea is, how do you market yourself? And also, how do you price determine for your product itself? Sagar Mitra, Sagar Mitra is the lowest level. Then you have the Matsya Seva Kendra, and then you have the Aqua Bazaar. Right? Okay. Moving on to a question which can come out of this area. I have just framed the question given in the paper as a question. Why is strengthening fisheries services crucial for the sector? Comment. This is called exactly using the words of an article to make a question. This is sometimes how UPSC frames questions. It picks up directly from the newspaper and frames it as a question. So you can actually get these type of questions also in the examination. Now, there's a lot of controversy which has happened on this point. You would know with regards to the movie Pushpa 2 and what has recently transpired with Allu Arjun and the unfortunate death of a person in the stampede which happened. This article, second part is more or less useless because we all are very conscious of what is happening. What is more important is what is the data related to stampedes? Because if we get a question with regards to crowd management, which is a very important duty as a police officer and as a, you can say, person who is related to public, you need crowd management skills. So there can be a question which in a way tries to link crowd management for you in the larger perspective of things. So here, the National Crime Records Bureau has revealed that between 1996 to 2022, we have the highest number of stampedes and deaths related to stampedes. 3,935 stampedes leading to 3,000 deaths. This is where this data is really problematic. 3,935 stampedes resulting into 3,000 deaths. This is pure negligence on the part of the police and the public authorities. More than that, most of them happened during religious festivals, political rallies, and celebrity appearances. And out of it, the biggest number is of religious gatherings. Stampede is when you are crushed to death because if there's a very big crowd and the crowd very quickly moves in a certain direction because of basic issues related to safety, or there's a, you can say, a certain disturbance in a corner, it could lead to a cascading effect. So therefore, you can actually get crushed. So because of lack of oxygen, or because of you being crushed, or because of suffocation, people die. Stampedes are basically you can say the biggest problem which India faces with regards to crowd management. We have such big crowds coming through that we do not have proper, you can say, crowd management skills in that regard. And this is where religious gatherings turned out to be the biggest chunk out of these 3,935 such stampedes. And in 2011, in Sabrimala, 106 people died. In 2013, in the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, 36 people died. And political rallies have also proven to be deadly, because in the Gandhi Maidan in Patna, 30 people died. This does not take into account the smaller stampedes which are happening across India. And Allu Arjun 1, Pushpa 2 1 was just an addition to that 3,935 in that regard. The point is, as an administrator, this data is important for you. It can be, yes, in Hathras recently also, we saw it at Mumbai railway station also, it recently happened. Panvel was the one where we had multiple people dying because of too much crowd coming through on. We have had infrastructure failure because of crowd strength. So in 2024 India, these things should be not in thousands at least. And we have all the technology to understand crowds. We have all the technology to understand the movement of crowds. We have specific institutes which are working to solve these issues. In the era of big data, a crowd should not die because of basic public failure or public machinery failure. So here you don't have any big point to be made, but for the ethics examination or for the ethics paper, which is the GS paper 4, this data can be used to write a good answer for a case study. So just remember, approximately 4,000 stampedes have happened since 1996, which is, you are rounding off the data. If I take into account the last 2 years, it will obviously reach by close to 4,000. Okay. Now we end, and I have a previous year question. I have a MCQ question for you here. So everybody is going to take part into it. We have an update with regards to an award which is given, which is called the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar. For you, for the purpose of the examination, GS paper 1 or prelims, you should know in what categories, what 7 categories are the children given these awards. So we have art and culture, bravery, innovation, science and technology, social service, sports and environment. Out of the 17 awardees, we have 7 boys and 10 girls, which is in itself a very interesting thing with regards to art and culture and bravery. It is majority of girls who are showing, you can say, extraordinary moments of strength. The idea is how does UPSC ask you this question? The PDF of this session you will find in the Telegram channel link which has been provided in the beginning. I'll show you the QR code. You can scan this QR code and join the Telegram channel. Within the next 2 to 3 hours, the link will be uploaded to this Telegram channel. So don't have to worry about this. It is getting uploaded, Bahadur. One of you on the beginning also asked this. You will find the PDF in this Telegram channel. Just scan it and join it. I'm showing you this for this amount of time. Just use your phone to scan it and you will be able to join the Telegram channel. Now, are we ready for the question? Are we ready for a MCQ question on this topic, which is representative of the examination? Yes? Okay. Consider the following: bravery, science and technology, sports and environment. Which of the above fields are covered under the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar? Only one, only two, only three, or all? The question is going to be in front of you. Just 1 second. The poll rather is going to be in front of you. One more option. Yes. It should be now in front of you. Please answer this question. This is the last topic. As the newspaper was flooded by the news related to the former Prime Minister, we had only 2 articles which were worth to understand with regards to UPSC within the editorials, and I hope that all of that is sorted. So everybody has to give this answer in the, yes, very good. Come on, everyone. So vis-a-vis a session which we had a very comprehensive understanding of tsunami technology, which was yesterday, this is based on the basic articles, a shorter session for you with regards to basic ideas related to fisheries, the concept of a Puraskar, crowd management, and the unwavering and most important contributions of a former Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh. Okay, let's give it 1 more minute. Okay, all her D. Okay, so we'll end the poll here, and most of you are on the right track with regards to this. We have percentage 57%, 56% of you totally correct. All of these categories, the 7 categories, please remember the 7 categories: art and culture, bravery, innovation, science and technology, social service, sports and environment. This can be a very simple question which can come through, which may not be something which you would have thought can be made into a question in the examination, but is important for your preparation. So on this note, I'll end this session on, you can say, while summarizing everything for you today. As I said, there will be a session on on Manmohan Singh and his basic contributions and his larger, how do we assess his legacy, very soon. So I hope that you have already registered for the UCSC. I hope that you're going to use this 55% discount to join our course, and do like the session, subscribe to our channel, and as I said, just use all of this information to create a repository which can then be used to write good mains answers. Thank you. Take care. I'll see you tomorrow with another set of issues. Take care. Bye-bye.